Hello again, this is Mr. Everett, and we're back with part two. I just wanted to go back and look at this one more time. So we're talking about proportions and proportional relationship. So a proportion is simply two equivalent fractions, right? And we can know that in two ways. We can simplify till we get the same fraction, or we can cross multiply and see they have the same cross products. That's a proportion, because our actual question is, how do we know if a relationship between two quantities is proportional? So what does proportional mean? Well, real technical definition is, it's when the relationship between two quantities, like sugar to liters of water, is constant. How do we know if it's constant? Well, if you remember, I guess it was sixth grade, they talked about a scale factor. So the scale factor here is 8 times 2 is 16. My scale factor is 2. The numerator and denominator have the same scale factor. It's constant. Same. It's constant. They're proportional. Same scale factor. 8 times 3, 2 times 3. Gives me the same fraction. They're equivalent. They're proportional. Scale factor. Does not have to be a whole number. 16 times 1.5 gives me 24. Same scale factor. It's constant. It's proportional relationship. My scale factor for our numerator here is 2. My scale factor for my denominator is 3. It's not constant, therefore it's not proportional. You could have also used cross products and saw that it wasn't, but the definition talks about constant, and you'll need that in the next unit. Okay, so I want to review that really quickly for you. All right, so we can also use tables and graphs to show proportional relationships. So we already completed one table and essentially turned that table into a bunch of ratios. But we could also cross multiply all these, or we could simplify them all and get 4 to 1 and see that it's a table full of equivalent ratios, which means that it's a table full of proportional relationships. But right now I want to look at a graph. All right, so we're going to take this same table and we're going to answer some questions as we create a graph using this information. All right, so we're going to answer a few questions. So I'm going to answer, what goes on the x-axis, water or sugar, and why? The next question, how much sugar do we add if there is no water? And I believe that's the only two I asked. Oops. So go ahead and answer those questions for me. Okay, let's look at a few possible answers. So first of all, we're going to put water on the x-axis and sugar on the y-axis, because I'm going to jump to letter B. If there's no water, there's no need for any sugar. You can't have lemonade. So the water, how much sugar you use, if you remember, depends on how much water. So we have independent and dependent. Sorry, my handwriting is terrible. So we have independent here and dependent here. So that's why the x goes on the, water's on the x-axis and y's on the, sugar, water's on the x-axis and sugar's on the y-axis. No water, no sugar. We call that the origin. The shape is a straight line. And trust me, I'm going somewhere with this. And the ratio of sugar to water for two people is cut it in half, right? And we get 4 to 1. Okay, 4 sugar, only the water. So what does all this mean? All right, our question again is, how do you know if a relationship between two quantities is proportional? Well, we already said if it's constant, which means has the same scale factor. But also, this is very important, whenever you graph a proportional relationship, it will always be a straight line and pass through the origin. By origin, we mean 0, 0. So one way you always know a proportional relationship is, we already talked about one of them before, they're equivalent fractions. There's a constant they have a constant relationship. But another way, when you graph a proportional relationship, it's always two things at least. A straight line, but it must pass through the origin. Very important. Okay. In this case, the origin was that second question. No sugar, no water, 0, 0. Okay. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to go over a little bit. I believe I only have one more slide. So in summary, how do you know if two quantities are proportional? One way is you can check for equivalent ratios. So if they give you a table, you can check for equivalent ratios. You look to see if the relationships, all of them, are constant. And the second is if you ever see a graph, if it's a straight line and it passes through the origin, it's proportional. Those are two ways you'll know or can identify a proportional relationship. Okay, we were done. Sorry I went over again, but that last slide was very important. You always see this, and people get tripped up on this part right here. So that's it. We're going to practice in the next video. Talk to you soon.